You're with us here in Business Today. I'm Abha Bakaya. Here are the day's top stories. Upbeat earnings push Nifty across the 19,700 barrier for the first time. Sensex also closes at a new record high. Investors are richer by over 5 lakh crore rupees after today's rally. Business Today TV, in an exclusive conversation with market guru Mihir Bora, he tells you how to navigate this bull market and what kind of mutual fund investments are the smartest for you. HDFC Bank makes a big bang entry into the markets after its merger with HDFC. The bank is now the 7th largest lender in the world in terms of market cap, much ahead of Indian rivals ICICI Bank and SBI. Indian box office takes comfort in Hollywood releases after Hindi films fail to lift collections. Mission Impossible 7 likely to hit 100 crore this week. More big releases in the pipeline. But first, earlier today, the third G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting started in Gandhinagar. The two-day event will see several key meetings with discussions focused on global economy, climate change and sustainable development. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman was center stage with India holding the presidency of G20. A roundtable discussion on crypto assets was also held, for which a unanimous decision is expected before the leaders' summit in September. Earlier today, the United States had hailed India's G20 presidency and its role in resolving global debt issues. Addressing media after a bilateral meeting with Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on the sidelines of the G20 finance ministers meeting in Gandhinagar this morning, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said talks included key challenges like climate change and pandemics.
The United States has appreciated India's leadership during its G20 presidency, and we will continue our close cooperation. The world is looking to the G20 to make progress on key challenges like climate change and pandemics as part of our work to strengthen the global economy and to support developing countries. I'm hopeful we can take significant concrete steps forward in our meetings. I appreciate India's demonstrated leadership on debt issues as G20 president, including your support for G20 efforts to improve the multilateral debt restructuring process.
Our discussions highlight the commitment of India and the United States to actively further the G20 agenda, and these include addressing critical global issues such as strengthening the multilateral development banks and taking coordinated climate action, facilitating consensus to intractable issues associated with rising indebtedness of low and middle income countries, and harnessing opportunities presented by crypto assets and digital public infrastructure for financial inclusion.
Business Today TV's correspondent Karishma Sudani in Gandhinagar covering these key dialogues. Let's go across. Karishma, what were some of the highlights of the day, especially on the bilateral chat between India's finance minister and U.S. Secretary Janet Yellen?
Well, it's been 2 days of intense discussions that are underway. In fact, day one where the finance ministers and the central bank governors of the member states are here and discussions are on various key topics. In fact, India's G20 presidency currently is pushing for debt restructuring of vulnerable countries, which is on the top of the agenda, and that is also because of the aftermath of COVID-19 pandemic. Besides this, governments across here have been discussing on the way out for cryptocurrency. It's a unanimous decision that they're likely to come with before the September state leaders meeting in New Delhi. Another yet key agenda on focus for them is the digital payments pathway that the government is also looking at, and with India's prioritizing on digital public infrastructure, the G20 presidency and discussions with the member states definitely hold a lot of value. Well, what is going to be following tomorrow is discussions on the similar lines, but as you know, today early in the morning there was also a joint discussion between the Finance Minister of India, Nirmala Sitharaman, and US Secretary Janet Yellen, where they did share of the stronger bilateral relationships that both the countries share. In fact, they also stressed on India's proposal of further enhancing the multilateral development banks and of course to expand their purpose, which in fact the World Bank president also obliged. The creme de la creme of the financial world is here. We have, of course, the leading finance ministers of the member states, the central bank governors of the member states, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, also Central Bank of India Governor Shaktikanta Das. We also have the Managing Director of IMF, that is International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, who has been a part of these discussions. World Bank President Mr. Ajay Banga has also been a part of these discussions, and of course many other dignitaries who've been on this panel where key important sessions were there. Tomorrow stands day 2 and yet another round of discussions before the third finance ministers and central bank governors meeting comes to an end.
This is Today TV's correspondent Karishma Sudani also spoke to the newly appointed World Bank President Ajay Banga. Here's an excerpt from that exclusive conversation.
Mr. Banga, firstly, congratulations. It's been a pleasure on behalf of the country. I'd like to. My first question to you is, with the presidency in, what is your focus and plan of action in the days to come?
Well, I'm my first 6 weeks in the bank, and what I'm really focused on is getting the evolution roadmap that the G20 common framework laid out, which is the new vision and mission that's eradicating poverty on a livable planet. So it expands to include pandemics and climate change and food insecurity and fragility. And then the second piece is the capital adequacy framework, which is how can we get more from the balance sheet we already have. And the third part is how can we make the bank work quicker and faster, what I call the better bank. And once we've done all that, then I'm going to come back to the big shareholders, the bigger bank, because the challenges we have are many. And government money, you need to have the multilateral banks grow bigger.
The new merged entity of HDFC and HDFC Bank as the 7th most valuable lender in the world. The new entity $151 billion this morning, putting it at the 7th. America, ICBC, the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, Wells Fargo and HSBC. The new HDFC Bank is well ahead of Morgan Stanley, Bank of China and Goldman Sachs. The other top Indian lenders, ICICI Bank and SBI, are considerably lower in the listings. Meanwhile, HDFC Bank's net profit for the quarter ended June jumped 30% on year to 120 billion rupees as its net interest income rose 21% on the back of steady net interest margin and loan growth. The net profit was above market expectations. According to the average of estimates of 11 brokerage firms, the bank's net profit was seen at 115 billion rupees. The bank's total advances rose 15.8% on year to 16 trillion rupees, with total deposits rising 19.2% on year to 19 trillion rupees. Bulls continue to dominate the Wall Street as benchmark equity indices continue to extend gains. Headline indices touch new record highs on the back of upbeat earnings, buying in index heavyweights and positive global cues. The Sensex was up 529 to close at 66,590, and the Nifty was up close to 150 points at 19,700, and it crossed that for the first time ever during the session. The top Nifty gainers were SBI, Wipro, Dr. Reddy's, Grasim and HDFC Bank, and the top laggards today ONGC, Hero MotoCorp, Tata Motors, Titan and Bharti Airtel. Investors, meanwhile, are jittery about the unprecedented bull run in markets. Questions are being asked on whether this pace is sustainable and when and how markets will consolidate or even slip into a bear grip. This is Today TV's markets editor, Shailendra Bhatnagar, spoke to Mihir Vora, Senior Director and CIO, Max Life Insurance, about some of these issues. Listen in.
What is driving this rally? And obviously the smile on your face tells me that your own portfolio is in the pink of health. I'm sure your treasury fund manager, your equity fund manager is having a gala time looking at Bloomberg screens and notching up gains one day after the other. What do you think are the underlying 2 or 3 reasons for this rally that we are seeing?
Sure. So very clearly, one is India's absolute position. Second is India's position relative to the rest of the world. And I think third is the fact that we are finally getting out of the worst of the tightening phase as far as the global central bank action is concerned. So if I were to just elaborate on each of the points, India's inherent GDP growth rate is anyway somewhere between 5.5 to 7%. So even if it's 6% over the next couple of years, it still makes India one of the fastest growing large economies in the world. So the second point is that related to everybody else, we want the Indian economy to grow at 7 to 8%. But even 6% is a very good number in the global scheme of things, relatively speaking. So that's India's absolute and relative position. The second big thing that has happened in terms of India's relative position is that China is increasingly becoming a question mark and a cross for a lot of global investors. And we have a lot of global pool of capital which needs to be deployed. So the one of the very few markets which is fast growing and can absorb relatively larger pools of money is India. So in the last 3 or 4 months, we have begun to see that kind of shift also happening, which is money which would have otherwise probably gone to countries like China coming into India.
Mihir, chart for us a course for the next, say, 1 year or so. Inflows are actually getting thicker and fatter because the feeling of missing out is very high on the Lal Street. You'll be on a monthly basis deluged with cash. How do you intend to deploy this money which is coming in over the next 12 months or so? Sectors that you like, allocations that you would prefer, and where is the market headed 1 year from now?
Sure. So clearly, if the Indian economy grows, then the biggest beneficiary and the biggest driver it has to be the financial sector, which is also a very large portion of the index. So a lot of the incremental money will go into financials. Within financials, we are still biased towards banking. But in the last 4 or 5 months, the differential between the private sector banks and the NBFC segment had opened up quite a lot. The valuation gap had become too much. So we have actually added some NBFCs to the portfolio, mid-cap as well as large NBFCs to the portfolio, because as we discussed, the funding tightening is past us, and NBFCs tend to do better when there is an interest rate easing cycle. Valuations had become very attractive versus the banks because NBFCs had outperformed. So within financials, we are probably biased a bit towards NBFCs compared to before. And of course, private sector banks remain the favorites.
Everybody that you meet on the road, in a party or at a dinner at your home, is having this intense feeling of missing out this super wonderful rally that we are seeing unfolding on the Lal Street. Given the corrections that often take place in these kind of setups, and some of them are sudden, how do you advise investors to navigate the next 3 to 5 years?
So 3 to 5 years is a very easy call. Stay invested and stick to your investment plan. Frankly, the difficulty is when you ask me for 1 or 2 months or 6 months. So I think with a country like India, as long as you invest reasonably over a reasonable period of time, as we keep saying, it's kind of as we say, Gisa Pita phase, but very relevant. That timing the market is less relevant. It is time spent in the market that is more relevant. So I think staying invested for a long period of time is the only way you can really generate wealth, unless you have some superior insights like you.
Okay, and the final question, Mihir, where will this money go into? Would you advise maybe some kind of a exposure to the bond market, given that interest rates are likely to now soften from these levels? Or would you be a pure equity animal over the next, say, 24 to 36 months?
So it's really a function of, asset allocation is a function of your age, risk profile, demographic profile, social responsibility, etc. So the younger you are, the more you would go into equities, and as you grow older, you would probably shift more towards fixed income. So it's a function of that. Plus, what are your short-term liabilities? If you have some expenses coming up in the shorter term, that money you probably will not put in equities. You'll keep it aside in a fixed income. So those kind of decisions one has to take based on one's requirements and profile. But as a thumb rule, the longer the horizon, the better it is for equities.
Catch the full interview on our social media handles and YouTube channel Business Today. German luxury auto giant BMW is placing its bets on the Indian EV market and will start producing electric vehicles in the country soon. In an exclusive interview with Chetan Bhutani, associate editor at Business Today TV, Vikram Pawar, president of BMW India, revealed that the company will be launching 7 new vehicles this year and will also launch a bike for the Indian market. Here's a slice of that conversation.
A cess was recently announced by the government, so SUV and MPVs all together are in the same tax bracket. So are you kind of affected, or are you planning to hike that prices by 2% further, or are you going to absorb it? What is in the state for the BMW consumers?
It's a bit too early to comment on that, because I think the information came out only in the press 2 days ago or so. We haven't seen the notification as yet. Even the industry body CIAM is asking for some clarification on the testing procedure, on the implications. So I think once we get more details, we'll be able to share the impact of it.
But as any initial assessment that you have?
No, very difficult, because right now we haven't even seen the notifications. It's very difficult to comment on it at the moment.
What volumes are you anticipating with the electric vehicle portfolio into the Indian market now?
So I expect that from a demand side, we'll end up with 15% demand of our total volume as electric in this year. But again, you have to remember that electric is not available at every price point at the moment. When we do that over the next 2 or 3 years, by 2025, I expect 30% of our sales coming from electric.
And how many new products are we expecting electric vehicles towards the Indian market?
I won't say electric, I'll tell you the total products that we are going to launch. So when we started the year, we said we launched 19 cars and 3 bikes. The X5 is our 12th car launch now in this year. So in the first half, we have launched 12. 7 more to come in car segment. Some surprises there, which we'll keep it for you later. and 1 bike to be launched as well later.
Last question. Also, is BMW kind of little worried about the Tesla coming over to India, subsequently becoming the 3rd largest manufacturer, if the proposal, or what is it said about 5 lakh cars goes through? Any comment on that?
I can't comment on that. I mean, it's their plan, what they have. I'm not privy to that, but I always welcome competition. I'm a leader in this segment. Most welcome, because the market expands if anybody comes in, and leader benefits at the end.
Here's what else is making news in the corporate world. Reliance Brands is reportedly in talks to fully acquire Bollywood actor Alia Bhatt's childwear brand Edamama. The brand was started in 2020 and may fetch the actor 300 to 350 crore rupees. According to a report, talks between the Isha Ambani-run Reliance Brands and Edamama are in final stages. An agreement is likely by the end of the month. Bain Capital in advanced negotiations to close the acquisition of Gautam Adani's 7-year-old shadow bank, Adani Capital. Bain has edged out Carlyle Group to emerge as a frontrunner in the acquisition process. The deal is expected to see Bain Capital pay 1,500 crore rupees, which is twice the book value, and additionally inject 500 crore rupees as primary capital for future growth. State Bank of India has estimated the loss from this year's flooding across the country at up to 15,000 crore rupees. According to the SBI Eco-Rap, the frequency of such events has set new records of economic stress. The report added that on average, just 8% of losses in India were insured, leaving a protection gap of 92 rupees for every 100 rupee loss. Tributes are meanwhile pouring in for Jane Birkin, the British-born actress and singer who inspired a whole range of premium, super expensive handbags. The 76-year-old Birkin passed away this Sunday after spending more than 6 decades in her adopted country, France. Luxury brand Hermes produced the first bag from the Birkin range in 1984, and the bag soon became symbols of exclusivity and wealth. Produced in very small quantities to keep their lure high and waiting lists long, a large number of bags have turned into collector's items. A bag was recently sold at an auction for a record price of $380,000. Interestingly, prices of these bags in the second-hand market are astronomical as well because of the artificial scarcity created by Hermes. That's where we leave it on the show tonight. Thanks so much for watching.